Now I'd like to welcome to the podium Tamara Smith, Associate Vice President of Strategic Implementation for Health Equity and Community Engagement at Humana. In addition to being a key partner of the Coalition to End Social Isolation and Loneliness, Tamara is a change agent who is responsible for building an innovative strategic framework designed to support all lines of business in achieving health equity priorities, effectively positioning health equity as a key culture and business driver across the Humana enterprise. Welcome, Tamara, who will also introduce our keynote speaker.
Good afternoon, everybody. Before I get started on my welcome, I just want to say a special thank you to Senator Murphy, even though I know he had to go back upstairs, Senator Smith, as well as a special thank you to Surgeon General Dr. Murphy, today's panelists, the Coalition to End Social Isolation and Loneliness, and all the participants today, all the panelists today. Thank you all for showing up and for standing up to share solutions for fostering social connection. So my name is Tamara Smith, as you heard. I'm the Associate Vice President for Humana's Health Equity and Social Impact Team. And in my role, I have the distinct honor of leading and executing strategies that are focused on improving health outcomes for every person we serve. And this includes addressing social isolation and loneliness, given the negative impact it has on whole person health. Humana has long been committed to creating and expanding resources for reducing loneliness and social isolation. Along with Humana's Far From Alone public health campaign, we're also building programs with community-based organizations to address health-related social needs like food and housing insecurity, transportation needs, and social isolation. We've also expanded screenings to identify needs so we can connect our members and patients to needed tools, such as our Humana Neighborhood Centers and our local digital directory called Humana Community Navigator. And these are just a few examples of initiatives happening, and we must continue to come together to address social isolation and loneliness as an integrated, personalized way to help more people lead happier and healthier lives. Now, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce you to today's keynote speaker, Kier Gaines, a licensed therapist and advisor and counselor for the White House Mental Health Initiatives. Kier will offer remarks on the importance of mental and social health and disrupting the stigma against mental health care. Through his advocacy, Kier has worked to inspire millions of people to be more proactive in their own mental health journey. He's received recognition for his unique, transparent, and authentic approach to the mental health conversation. I must say, on a personal note, I'm absolutely thrilled to have Kier, a Black male, as a leading voice for many of the issues we're discussing today, because he represents many communities, including my own community. In many of our communities, mental health stigmas are still so prevalent, and practical solutions are not regularly discussed in our families. Kier, your approach to providing practical, everyday solutions for issues like loneliness is not only inspiring, but it's making an impact and changing lives. And that's what matters most. That's why we're all here today. So with that, it's my distinct pleasure to introduce you today. Welcome, Kier.
Good afternoon, everybody. As she's so wonderfully stated, my name is Kier Gaines. Oh my gosh, what am I? I am a husband. I am a father. I am a social media content creator. I'm a small business owner. I'm a licensed therapist. And as my Nigerian father was saying in this thick accent, I am tired. It's funny, one of my frat brothers, just really quickly, he said, bro, after 40, you don't get tired anymore. You just are tired. It's less of a condition, more of an identity. Seriously, though, this is a labor of love that has, over the years, poured into me 100 times over, and I'm very thankful to wear it. I want to extend gratitude to you all for allowing me just a few moments of your awareness. In a very busy world, it's hard to sit still and focus on a singular thing, and I don't take that for granted, so thank you. A little bit about me. If you're going to listen to a guy jabber on for 20 minutes, I think it's important that you have a little bit of context. Context has informed so many parts of my life. I want to extend it to you all in this moment. I grew up in Southeast Washington, D.C., not too far from there, but a very different environment. The neighborhood I grew up in was not pretty. It was full of drugs and crime and horrible violence. My mother, God rest her soul, was my saving grace. She taught me the value of being a good person, the value of being good to people, even when no one is around to see it or to congratulate with doing so. The environment that was visceral and violent outside of my home, mixed with the love and culture inside of my home, really informed the next 20 years of my life. I spent my 20s working in DC and in my community specifically, helping men and women that have just been released from prison or from drug treatment facilities, helping them obtain and maintain gains of employment. I moved on from there to work in education, helping students with behavioral challenges, trying to get a handle on what's next after high school. From there, I transitioned to working for the Washington, D.C. school district, building job programs for students and families with disabilities, helping them develop a sense of economic self-sustainability. I'm not just giving you my resume to give you my resume. I say all this to say, I have had an intimate view of how loneliness and social isolation infiltrate every single nook and cranny of human existence. Context is key. Context is really key. Context is the season 3 origin story of your favorite Netflix show character. It gives you that inside look. That's how he became the villain. It gives you a peek behind the curtain. It gives you that aha moment. Context helps me understand the world around me. It's difficult for us to understand the world that we don't relate to people in it. But context helps me understand how gang culture in my neighborhood is fueled by fear of isolation. Isolation from protection, isolation from community, isolation from acceptance. Context helped me when I began working in corporate America, and I would see these men work 50, 60, 70-hour weeks. Terrified of the isolation that comes from being a man that can't take care of your family. Fear of isolation. Isolation from community, isolation from safety, isolation from warmth. Two very different worlds, both driven by the very same instinctive fear. Side note, as a licensed therapist, there are a lot of you in this room who all have different identities. One thing I would love for you to know, from a foundational, emotional standpoint, you're not that different. People think they're a lot more different than they are emotionally. Not really. Back to the speech. Context is key. But life isn't a Netflix show. And we don't get to get that peek behind the curtain of the folks that we deal with, we work with, love every single day. You don't get to know what's going on. This is why I made my personal mantra, I don't have to agree in order to empathize. Your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors do not have to align with my values in order for me to offer you the most basic human kindness. I think we forget that sometimes. It's not a perfect model, but it's one that I'm working on. I want to tell you a quick story. In undergrad, my major was communications, the focus is journalism. And my photography professor gave us this assignment to go out into the world and capture everyday human life. Now, by this time I had moved from Southeast, I lived in Columbia Heights in Upper Northwest, far more affluent neighborhood, but it had its very own crisis point. There was a housing crisis there, and there was profound homelessness everywhere. Walked up on a man who was homeless, and I asked him if I could take his picture, and his response was very muted, but I think it's going to stick with me for life. He said, I live on the streets, no one cares. Take the picture, don't take the picture. I'm invisible, so it doesn't matter. I wanted to tell him in that moment that I see you, you're valuable, you're visible, you're here, you're human, you're loved, you're accepted. but my words can't walk back decades of mistreatment from other people. I would be doing that for me. I took that picture of him, by the way. I felt like I was taken away from his humanity at that juncture after knowing what he saw in me. I didn't take the picture. What I did take was a seat right next to him. We just sat in silence, didn't say a single word, just looked off into the distance. And after a while, I got a little hungry, so I took the sandwich I had in my backpack and I split it in half, and he and I just started eating the sandwich. And after a while, he warmed up and he started talking about his past a little bit. He talked about his family. He talked about his psychiatric challenges. He talked about his whole life. He told me that at that point, he'd been living on the streets for 15 years. And just hearing the stories, I had to ask him, before I even thought about it, it came right out of my mouth. I said, don't you ever get lonely? And he said something oddly profound. It was years ago, so I'm paraphrasing. He said, the loneliness that I feel in this alley is nothing compared to the loneliness I felt around a family that could not see me past an obligation. You can't be a disappointment. There's nobody to disappoint. First off, I wasn't aware that I was having a conversation with him anyway. Just thought he was a random guy on the street. But I'm here learning life lessons in the alley just the same. When I was writing this speech, my daughter, she walked into my office and she asked me, she looked at the paper and she asked me, Daddy, what's the difference between loneliness and SoCal isolation? Which for a kindergartner is really, really, really good in terms of an attempt at reading. So good job, Lulu. But how do you explain these gigantic concepts to such a small child? I don't know, so I did my best. The best way that I could explain it is I said, baby, isolation is like being stranded on the moon. And loneliness is like being stranded in the ocean and dying of thirst. And I looked at her face and she was confused. Then she was a little withdrawn. And then she became sad. It was such a bittersweet moment. It was bitter because that innocence will one day disappear and she'll understand very well what those feelings are. But the sweetness was in the hope for the future, in the hope that the generation behind us will take this thing so much of a bigger push than we could ever do. Gives me promise and hope for the future that we have ahead of us. And then I started nerding out and I talked about the psychological manifestations. And by the time I came to, she wasn't even there anymore. She ran off to go watch the movie. Because 5-year-olds don't care about the world's problems. It's not their job to. It's so counterintuitive. How is it possible that in a time when we're more connected than ever, there are people who still feel isolated? We have more access to people than we've ever had in the history of time. I can log on to Twitter right now and I can know what hundreds and hundreds of millions of people are thinking in a single instance. How is it that anyone can be or feel isolated in 2023? I thought about that question. I thought about it, and then I had an aha moment. The answer was the answer that I gave my daughter about loneliness. It's like being stranded at sea and dying of thirst. Imagine losing your life to a condition that can be fixed by a resource that is all around you. Quick facts. Did you know that the Indian Ocean is 27 million square miles? And that even though oceans make up 70% of the Earth's surface, the Indian Ocean is 20% of that. And at its deepest is 12,000 feet. All of that water and not a single drop of it is drinkable. That's because isolation is not a quantitative issue. It's a qualitative issue. We don't need more bodies, we need more value. We need more love and purpose and meaning to validate our existence and to kindle somebody to be able to better validate things. Now, there's a deeper part of loneliness that I find in my practice, it invades our consciousness a little bit. I want to talk about it. In our modern world, the internet gives us anonymity and an illusion of privacy. The idea of acting on impulse and saying exactly what it is that you want to say is so intoxicating that sometimes we abandon our own humanity for it. We leave behind the parts of ourselves that are fair, equitable, reasonable. We can become the meanest, most judgmental versions of ourselves. Judging ourselves as parents, judging ourselves as spouses, judging ourselves as adults. We forget that you can listen to a perspective without judging. Now, I've been doing a lot of work with my clients around this, and I want to try to model this behavior that I would like to see in the world. So can I challenge you all to put this on? Can you commit to it? Yes, all right. There are 3 things that we can do to play a role in changing the global epidemic of loneliness. Because it does start with us. But these 3 things aren't what you may think. When we talk about changing the world, we think of something giant and explosive. Changing the world really starts with a small step inside of you. The first thing we can do is we can practice observing. We can practice observing our thoughts without judging. If you will be so kind, can you please repeat after me? I am not my feelings. I am not my feelings. I experience my feelings. I experience my feelings. I am not my thoughts. I am not my thoughts. I generate my thoughts. I generate my thoughts. This is a fascinating thing that happens with our thoughts and our beliefs and feelings, where we become so married to them that it's hard to separate where we begin and they end. And when we walk into the world and people don't accept our thoughts, they don't accept our feelings, it makes us feel like they don't accept us either. It's a bit of a cognitive distortion. When I work with my clients, I always say that you want to be a passenger to your feelings, not a prisoner of them. And 2 ways that we use this imagery is one of them is fish in a stream. Your thoughts and your feelings are like fish in a stream. Some of them are beautiful, like betta fish. They're multiple colors, just swimming very elegantly through the water. And some of them are worn-torn and have holes and been there for a while, move quite slow. You may feel an urge to put a hook in the water and catch it. But there's a way that you can observe the fish without getting your hands wet or getting them slimy. And another one that I use is shirts on a hanger. All of my feelings are shirts on a hanger in a closet. I can look at the shirt, I can notice its beauty, I'm curious about where it comes from and what its purpose is, but I don't always have to put that shirt on. When you observe your thoughts without judging them, you can extend more grace to people who don't have much in common with you. Number 2, the thing you can do is take small moments to reach out. I like this one because it is a personal challenge of mine. I tell my clients to call someone that you haven't talked to in a while. This is hard for me because I have family that, how can I put this for life? I have family that have a lot to share, and your interest in that conversation does not determine the length of that conversation. So what I do is I norm the conversation from the very start. Hey, cousin Joan, this is Kier. I have 10 minutes to talk. Don't have a lot of time, but I've been thinking about you and I wanted to hear the sound of your voice. What's going on? It sets a clear expectation of how much time I have to talk. No hard feelings when I need to get off at that 10-minute mark. Some of my younger cousins, I send voice notes to. I don't know if you know about voice notes in your phone, but it's really good because you can pace the conversation however you like. If it takes you a day to respond, that's fine. If it takes you two, that's okay. But you're not forced into an interaction that you're not ready for. I know this may seem trivial, but it helps me and it helps my clients eliminate the barriers to contacting folks that we can easily go days, weeks, months, or years without talking to. Number 3 is reframe they to we. The word they allows us to other the problem of loneliness, social isolation. It allows us to feel so small that we sink into inaction and we may choose to do nothing. And nothing is my brain's default favorite thing to do. I like to eliminate the word they because you know what they say about they, right? They tell us when a movie is bad. They set the standard. Some of our most intrusive thoughts come from they. I'm not as pretty, I'm not as manly, I'm not as tall, I'm not as smart, I'm not as wealthy as they. The faceless, nameless experts. Perfect people in the crowd. Sometimes there is no they. There's only we. We allows us to take ownership and be stewards of change. We doesn't lead from the front. We doesn't lead from the rear. We lead from the direct center. I want to challenge everyone in this room to be the change that they see. Can one person change the entire world? That's very unlikely. But one person can shift the perspective of the person next to them. And that person can shift the perspective of the people in their community. And those communities can shift the perspective of the larger community. And on and on and on. One of my favorite books is a book called Atomic Habits by a guy named James Clear. And in the book, he talks about this woman who hates working out. She lives in a Manhattan penthouse and she does not care to work out, but she does it to maintain her flexibility and her vitality for life. And the trick is, she hates working out, but she doesn't have to worry about working out. All she has to do is put her shoes on and jump in the cab. The rest of it takes care of itself. If you feel like the change that you want to see in the world is too large, you don't have to change the world. You just have to put on your shoes and jump in the cab. I know what it's like to feel hopeless. I know what it's like to feel like the change is too big for you to mount. And in those moments, I have a poem that when I work in the community, I used to say with my clients to help fight the hopelessness. Can I share with you all? All right, the poem is called Somebody Said That It Couldn't Be Done. And the way that it goes is as follows. Somebody said that it couldn't be done, but I, with a chuckle, replied that maybe it couldn't, but I would be one and wouldn't say so till I tried. So I buckled right in with a bit of a grin on my face. If I worried, I hit it. I started to sing as I tackled that thing that couldn't be done and I did it. Somebody scoffed, "Oh, you'll never do that, Kier. At least no one has ever done it." So I took off my coat and I took off my hat. And the next thing I knew, I begun it. With a lift of my chin and a bit of a grin, without any doubting or quitting, started to sing as I tackled that thing that couldn't be done, and I did it. There are thousands who will tell you that it can't be done. There are thousands who will prophesize failure. There are thousands who will point out to you one by one the dangers that wait to assail you. So just buckle right in with a bit of a grin. Just take off your coat and go to it. Just start to sing. You tackle that thing. Couldn't be done. You do. My name is Kier Gaines. And I've been here.